And then almost like, and then before we get onto the Ronald Koeman one, I'll just there was a nice little one. I was asking about Samuel Eto'o because I think he played in a game against West Ham, and as I'm asking him the question, and Mark was about to answer, this big booming voice comes out from the back of the Goodson press room. Get a move on. We've got to go and get the coach. Sam Allardyce. And, when you look back on things that, you think, oh, well, when you think of the Sam Allardyce being Sam Allardyce, and then, we get to England, and you think, oh, well, I've been basically, interrupted by the England manager. And then he comes to Everton. I should have known when that happened. I thought he can end up here someday. But yeah, just...
Unique Live is the latest soccer card collection from Futera. Each week we'll release brand new cards via the website. Now over the years our soccer cards have been crafted with 24 karat gold, silver, porcelain, crystal and even diamond. But we don't just love a bit of bling here at Futera. No, we're passionate about creating beautifully rare soccer cards. You know, the kind of cards that you want to add to your collection so much that you contemplate selling your own dog to buy one. Sorry, Rover. With limited edition, officially licensed high-end cards available for some of the world's biggest clubs, you can be sure to find huge names in world football appearing on these cards week after week. So if you're new to sports cards, or you're already a big collector, or you're just looking to buy a present for the football fan in your life, well, this is for you. Now share this video with everybody you've ever met and head over to the website to buy yours now. We'll see you there soon.
Futera presents Soccer Cards and Chill.
Hello and welcome back to the Soccer Cards and Chill podcast. I am joined today by Richard Buxton, author of Fine Margins, How Manchester City and Liverpool Forged the Ultimate Footballing Rivalry. Rich, welcome to the Soccer Cards and Chill podcast, mate.
Cheers, thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. You are the first journalist that I've had on. Well, everybody who comes onto the show, right? So we had the first American the other week. We had the first fellow marketeer on the episode on the show recently, a guy called Frankie, and now we've got the first journalist. Fancy that! So there's a nice little honour for you.
Yeah, it's good to be facing something at least.
There you go. So, well, this is a kind of a bit of a strange one for me in the sense that I kind of knew you in a different life. We obviously spoke many times outside Goodison Park. You cover both Everton and Liverpool, don't you? Do you want to talk a little bit about your book? As I imagine we've got plenty of Manchester City and Liverpool fans listening and watching this at the moment, Rich. So you want to tell us a little bit about this book?
Yeah, it's quite fitting that we're doing this on a World Book Day of all days. It's almost like it was perfectly planned, wasn't it? But I can assure you it wasn't. But yeah, so the book's about the rivalry between Liverpool and Man City, and people think, oh, it's a new rivalry. It's only cropped up since Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp came in, but it actually goes a lot deeper than that, and it goes back to the 1960s and throughout the decades, even to like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. So it encompasses a lot, and there's a lot that happened in the rivalry. And I know I've already had people on Twitter today saying, using a bit of artistic license, saying it's the ultimate rivalry. And my point is, it's not the biggest, it's not the best. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's the ultimate one because it incorporates so much, and people don't actually realise how much Liverpool and City are against each other competitively on and off the pitch. So I think it's a good read. And I mean, I'm slightly biased saying that, but it was even for me, it was an eye-opening experience to write.
Yeah, it's a good book. I mean, I gave you a review of this book, I said, as an Evertonian, I enjoyed it. And that for me is a big, big review, mate, because these are two football clubs. Take my Futera hat off for a second. We're the official licensee of both of these clubs to make their trading cards, obviously. But as an Evertonian, to read a book on Liverpool and Manchester City, they're not, in footballing terms, they're not really two of my favourite clubs as an Evertonian. So it's a really good book, mate. And I learned a lot as well. And do you know what? I'd have probably been one of those guys that would have said to you, are you sure this is like a big rivalry? Does this really go back that far? But actually, as the book proves, I mean, you've got a lovely little bit in the middle of the book with some great images, which is I really like looking at these because some of them are brilliant. There's a picture here of Joe Mercer and Bill Shankly having a conversation in 1971. There's lots of little anecdotes here. There's Joe Corrigan. Is that
Corrigan,
anyway? Yeah, when he got hit with a bottle in 1981 on Boxing Day. So there is an element to this rivalry, and as I say, we kind of make cards for both of these clubs, and I see it manifest itself in supporters of both of these clubs. How was it writing a book during COVID, Rich? Was that a strange experience? Did it make it easier for you to write this book?
Yes and no, really. To be honest, I'd had the idea of I want to do face-to-face interviews where possible. Obviously, some not always ideal. And I think I only ended up doing one in the end. I think I ended up going to Connah's Quay Nomads because Andy Morrison, the ex-Man City captain, manages there, and I agreed to meet him. I think it was mid-February, just before I went to cover the game at Anfield in the FA Cup, and sat down with him for a good half an hour, and came away from it and just thought, well, this is a start. This is a very good start. Because I was sitting in the press room transcribing, and I thought, I can't wait to get out and do more interviews. And then COVID happened, and then I mean, my experiences with COVID were, after the Everton Man United game I saw you at, there was then the Liverpool Atletico Madrid game, which was the last one in front of fans, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, it was a strange night then because I thought, when's the next game coming? When's the next commission for an article coming? When's the next press conference coming? And the book was sort of really low down on the list. And then when we got told the league's going to be off till at least April, I thought, well, I got a bit of time to make some headway. And then it was May, and then it got pushed to June. And the deadline was the end of May, so I had to work hard. So I was on the beg to players on social media. I reached out to a few colleagues who had contacts, and just put it together that way. Really, just sort of ringing people up and doing a few interviews, and I mean, some went a bit further than others. I had to ring up Ian Bishop in America. Ian's brilliant, by the way. He's definitely carved out a niche as a football pundit, I think, already. But he was absolutely brilliant. And then there were others who spoke to Glenn Pardo a few weeks before he sadly passed. Spoke to Ian Callaghan, Alan Kennedy, Paul Power. I rang him in France, the ex-Everton midfielder who was City
Paul
captain.
Power,
Paul was brilliant. I mean, everyone was brilliant, to be fair. Even like and I know this is probably the bit you enjoyed. Michael Ball, the ex-Everton player.
Yeah. City,
Michael for
as well.
Best part of an hour. Oh, he was brilliant. They were all brilliant. So I can't really fault anyone who contributed. They were all superb. I mean, even people like Stephen Warnock, who didn't play that many games against City, and is quite a respected pundit now. But he was spot on. Chris Kirkland, Emil Heskey. I mean, I could be here all day. I mean, the one that I was really sort of pleased with the most out in terms of tracking him down was Sylvain Distin, because it took a good few weeks to get hold of him. It was like, he's very approachable, obviously, but you have to keep saying to him, can you do this interview? Can you do this interview? And eventually, he relents, or he remembers. And it's like, when do you want me to call you? Well, when I'm free. What's your number? And I thought, oh, if he's ringing me, he could spring this on me at any moment. But to be fair to him, he was pretty prompt and he was absolutely brilliant. So, everyone who contributed was brilliant. But obviously, you always want more. You want to have more depth, especially the sort of mid-90s stuff. I wanted to have a bit more sort of balance, because we had sort of players from both sides largely through the decade, and then when it came to the mid-90s, we sort of had sort of a predominantly City side. It was still great, obviously, but you would like to have some Liverpool players to sort of offer some balance to that. But in the circumstances, I thought it was pretty well done, and we sort of got lucky that the publishers agreed to push back the deadline because of Project Restart, and that meant then before they announced Project Restart, we were sort of like, there was a big question mark ending, and then after that it was, well, Project Restart's happening. Liverpool could win the title here, they could win the title there, City could gift it to them as they ultimately did, and then City could have to form the Guard of Honour. And the way it panned out worked out perfectly, because it meant we could actually incorporate all those elements and sort of put this as a testament that the Premier League continued through a pandemic. Liverpool and City's rivalry continued through a pandemic, and there was a change in the guards, and that's the sort of, when we started it, I thought that's the sort of ending I want to have anyway. As in, Liverpool can't unseat City one season, but they do it the next season, and then it carries on and on and on. But obviously COVID proved a bit of a game changer. So, yeah, the short answer will be it was very difficult, but also very enriching.
It's fascinating, mate. It really is fascinating to hear. I personally love the process that authors have to go through to write books. One day I want to write my own at some point. So it's great for me to listen to that. It sounds like, in a way, though, Rich, like, although you couldn't get out as much as you wanted to, in a way, it was kind of like a half blessing in disguise, because it gave you a little bit more time to get things finished, right? And I wonder as well whether or not, because of this, because a lot of the people that you wanted to speak to were kind of at home, it made it easier for them to find time to talk to you, because that must be a bit of an issue, right? There, these people are all incredibly busy. As you say, they've got lives now as coaches and pundits or whatever, these ex-players. Did you find that or not?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a blessing having the ability to sort of drop people a WhatsApp or an email or a Twitter DM and say, we're doing this book, and would you be able to help out? I mean, I did reach out to a few people before lockdown, and I had one or two either which I thought these are going to be really good characters, and we'd agreed in principle to meet up, and then lockdown happened, and it just sort of, I mean, I sort of, when COVID started going on the rise, obviously you sort of sensed something was going to happen in a bad way, and then on the back of that, I thought, okay, well, we're not going to have this person or that person. But then again, you get some of the most decorated and highly regarded players of both clubs' histories. I did have a few contacts myself. Obviously, I speak to people like Sander Westerveld quite regularly, but to get people like Glenn Pardo, God rest him, Alan Kennedy, Ian Callaghan, Paul Power, Gary Gillespie, they're the sort of names you wanted in this book. The ones who give it some weight. You don't want to just have some fringe players. And to be honest, I think the amount of fringe players was probably minimal. I mean, everyone's played a good number of games for City, whether across one or two spells. Likewise, Liverpool, Stephen Warnock, Chris Kirkland, Emil Heskey. They might not be the most decorated or revered names in Liverpool's history, but they played a fair good number of games. And, you wanted something with a bit of depth. You didn't want, some, YTS kid saying, oh, I hated them and that was it, basically. So, the fact that all these people talk and, and gave it time, and as you say, they didn't really have anywhere to go, but, we were all in the same boat. So for them to actually give it time was absolutely wonderful. And I've got to say, I think it did probably make this book what it is in a sad sort of way.
Yeah, and it's a stellar attempt, mate. Honestly, it's a really, really good book. I advise, if I, as an Evertonian, enjoyed it, then if you're a Liverpool fan or you're a Manchester City fan, then it makes for really good bedtime reading. So, yeah, it's crazy now, Rich, thinking back to that conversation that we had. So, as I said at the start of the show in a previous life, I was the host of Grand Old Team. And frequently interview fans and authors and journalists and other people within the Everton sphere outside of Goodison Park. And the last time we had that conversation was after the Man United game. It was a United won. Did they win or was it a draw? I can't remember. Sigurdsson
1-1.
1-1.
Everton had a different
late
goal.
on. That's right. Yeah, God.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long time ago now. And I remember leaving the stadium at the time and saying to me, Dad, I wonder, when we'll kind of come back here. And he's like, no, don't be silly. It'll be fine, as people kind of do in these situations. Because I was very kind of conscious of this thing that was going on, as we all were. And then I remember going on holiday. I remember the Atletico game when I was abroad, which picked a very poor time to go abroad and almost got stuck there in the Dominican Republic. But I remember, so you were at that Atletico game. Then did you feel that day that there was a sense, because that was a couple of days on, maybe it was 3 or 4 days on from the Man United game, Everton Man United game at Goodison. So did you kind of feel, or maybe it was a week on, I can't remember. But anyway, did you kind of feel at that time like, oh, something's going on, I'm probably not going to come back here for a little while?
Well, yes and no. I mean, to be honest, what happens is normally the format is that you go to the games, and the routine was you have a pre-match press conference before the Champions League game, and questions were coming up in the press conference that Jurgen Klopp wasn't getting happy with. He was like, people coming up saying, do you think this game should be getting played? And he's like, I don't have a say in this matter. And then I stuck around for the Atletico Madrid one. And then the Spanish journalists started doing a bit of mischief making, they were saying stuff like, we're hearing rumours this game's getting called off. What do you make of that, Mr. Simeone? And I'm going, no one said this to anybody. No one at UEFA said it. No one at Liverpool said it. No one at Atletico said it. No one at Liverpool City Council said it. So it felt like sort of mischief was getting made. I mean, we know the game should have been cancelled, and to be honest, I did feel quite uneasy being there because my wife was like, make sure you disinfect your hands, make sure you wipe down every surface. We weren't quite at face mask territory, but it was like, people are coming in from the COVID hotspot of Spain and even Europe at that time. You need to be careful. And obviously, me being me, I had to go and cover the pre-match coach welcome outside Anfield, which meant then I had to walk right past the Atletico fans as they were queuing up towards the turnstiles. So I was feeling really uneasy going in. It was a great game, I've got to say. It was probably one of the best games of last season, I'd say. End-to-end drama, and obviously Atletico Madrid blew Liverpool away in extra time. But the game until that point had been on a knife edge. It'd been a really good contest. But at the back of your mind, you're thinking, this doesn't feel right. Something's coming. And we went, then, as you normally do after these games, you go into the mix zone where the players walk through. And when the Premier League's on, it's a lot more steady. There's not as many people. It's not as crowded. European nights, the foreign press pile in. You get people like university placement students coming in because they get the access, and it's just heaving. And I was stood around with obviously the English journalists and looking at the papers had just broken. So the back page of the Times came out about 10:15, and it said games are going behind closed doors. And that's when it sort of hit me of, right, this is getting interesting now. And to be honest, after that, the more stuff that was happening, excuse me, the more stuff that was happening and developing on the back pages, I sort of thought, well, I've done my analysis. I don't think I'm going to get anything in the mix zone. And if I do, it's not going to get used because something big is going to take over soon. So I thought, right, it was about 11:15, 11:30. I thought, I'm going to call it a night. So I left the ground, got my car, went home, thought, this has been an interesting night. Let's see what comes of it. Thankfully, I did because Diego Costa came through coughing and spluttering, simulating COVID.
Yes, I remember that.
And when I saw that on social media, I just thought, thank God I got out because I think I would have genuinely, professionalism aside, if he's doing that and making light of something that serious, I would have probably kicked him or swung a punch. Because if you're joking about something like that, then knowing how severe it is in this country and in your own, in the city you're based in, then I think you're clearly just misunderstanding how serious it is. And, by Friday morning, the derby was coming up at Goodison on the following Monday. And we were given protocol forms on the Thursday from Everton saying, you need to fill this out. Have you been anywhere? This, that, and the other. Have you got any symptoms? No, this, that, and the other. Sign it, return it ASAP, and then you'll be given your pass on Monday. Now, we assumed that it'd be behind closed doors. We assumed that obviously this is the reason why we've got to fill these forms out. But then Everton shut Finch Farm. They said no media are coming in unless you're a rights holder, so Sky Sports, BT, those sorts of people. And then Liverpool moved their press conference from Melwood to Anfield on the same day. This was on the Friday the 13th. And on the back of that, then obviously the Premier League shut down for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And Everton was basically, you've seen the announcement, basically, whatever you got received from us before, disregard it now because everything's changed. And then, following the whole Project Restart developments was interesting because I had to still file columns for papers in the Far East, and they were saying, well, what's happening now, and what do you make of this, and there was stuff still going on. It wasn't a case of just the league shut down. It was a case of this is happening, that's happening. What do you think should happen? What do you think football should do when it comes back? And then obviously stuff like Liverpool's owners furloughing non-playing staff and stuff like that. So you always had something to write about in lockdown. But I mean, and obviously I had the book to sort of burrow away on. But I do feel like there's definitely been, since that Atletico game, I still can't get my head around it, to be honest. And it does feel like there's a bit of self-preservation going on from the government side of things, obviously, because there are people aligned to ministers who had shares in the Jockey Club, and obviously Cheltenham was going on. So because Cheltenham had to go on, the Liverpool Atletico game had to go on. But I mean, you look at the deaths directly attributed to it from both the game and from the festival. This shouldn't have happened. It was clearly a critical stage. So, I mean, I look back on that game, the Atletico game, quite. I mean, it was a great game. Don't get me wrong, but I look back on it with a feeling of unease still.
Yeah, and mate, it's really, really kind of strange, and thinking back to that little period of time, because at that point as well, like there wasn't really a lot of information on the virus. Like it was kind of like we had the data out of China, the data out of Italy, which wasn't looking good at the start. And it was kind of like it's crazy to think back now in that situation that those events took place, as you say. Just you've really kind of like taken me back to that period in my own life and my own feeling. As I say, we went on holiday. I tell people personally, I was adamant to my wife, I don't think we should go. I don't think we should go. Well, it's fine. They haven't closed anything down. We got to the Dominican Republic and they closed the borders after we'd been there a day or two. So for the first time in my life, Rich, as a man, I was right about something. So that was good. That was a bonus. Normally, I don't get to be right about very much. But it's fascinating to hear, your side. You're so kind of close to the game. And I think as a lot of football fans listening to this, it's great to get that insight. So the characters within Liverpool, let's say, you do these press conferences with Klopp. What kind of a guy is he? Is he as like high energy as we see on the side of the pitch and stuff? What kind of guy is he?
I think he's probably more measured in the media sphere than he is probably when he's on the touchline. But he's quite talkative. He's obviously you're never short of copy really with him. And even when he sort of tries to bat something away, I mean, he did it last week. He batted something away in the paper embargo section, and then he sort of realised what he'd done. He just went, yeah, and then went on like that, complete, just like gave you your 100, 200 word quotes. So he's always incredibly good value. He's absolutely brilliant for that. And to be honest, I've had a bit of a weird experience with Liverpool managers in my job. I've been doing this since 2009. Benitez, I just couldn't take it to him. Hodgson, likewise. Hodgson sort of had this habit of tripping himself up in the media, and then would get angry at the media for pointing out that he tripped himself up. I mean, I'm just going off on a tangent. There was a great story that I've told a few people that when he was in his 6-month spell at Liverpool, they played West Ham on a Saturday night, and we were all down at Melwood at the old training grounds. And the first question from Sky Sports News is always, "So Roy, any team news?" And Roy being Roy goes, "Well, I don't want to give anything away." And he rambles on for about a minute. And then he drops it in that Jay Spearing just got injured in training, like literally 10 minutes ago. And it's like, I mean, if you're dropping stuff like that in the media sphere, then no wonder no one's got faith in your abilities. But yeah, and then obviously Kenny came in, Kenny Dalglish, who's funny enough, 70 years old today. Happy birthday, Kenny.
Happy birthday, Kenny Dalglish.
Kenny was very old school. Yeah, he was very old school, Kenny. So, I mean, I sort of, because of the past two managers, I didn't really have the courage of sort of speaking up to Liverpool managers because, I mean, I'd only been doing the job probably 18 months at the time, barely that. So when Kenny came in, I thought, well, this is the time, the club feels a bit more homely to be around. It doesn't feel as hostile. The last owners have gone. It seems a little bit more genuine. So I used to ask Kenny questions in the sort of the radio breakout because that was when we sort of had that sort of access. But Kenny being Kenny, he would just bat away a question. I think Andy Carroll scored in a game against Brighton in the FA Cup, and I said, that was a really well taken goal from Andy Carroll. I mean, do you think he could probably, kick on from this? And Kenny's answer was, he was a P roller, and just walked away. And I was just like, And then we went to the other extreme with Brendan Rodgers. Now, Brendan loved to talk, never short of talking, and again we had those breakouts at Melwood, and I felt a little bit comfortable asking questions at the early start. So I asked him about the youth players, and he came up with all this technical jargon. Suso's an 8.5, and Raheem Sterling's a 9.5, and I'm thinking those positions don't exist. But Brendan was great, to be fair, and you felt comfortable talking to him and stuff like I had to do a piece for the Irish Examiner on the Martin O'Neill getting the Republic of Ireland job, because obviously it was a contentious subject. A Northern Irishman taking over the Republic team. I cleared Liverpool's press officer beforehand, and then asked the questions, and he was pretty good. He was quite open, and I said something about your own ambitions and stuff like that, and he was good. But obviously, the football didn't really match up to it. But whereas Klopp has been a bit more sort of what you see is what you get, in terms of your football style and also the media personality, there isn't this disparity between the two. So. I mean, I know I've gone around the houses here a little bit, but just to give you a bit of an insight, I think Klopp is probably one of the better Liverpool managers because what he says is matched by what you see on the pitch. There isn't sort of any real disparity. And even yesterday he was talking about the fact that players might be having to go to COVID red zones during the international break, and he gave a really long answer. And it was honestly, it's one of these things where when you've got to write a piece, you've got to normally pad out the quote with an add-on, so you get a quote from somewhere else and make a reference to it as meanwhile this is happening. It was just basically a solid quote with the background. So that's the sort of thing of that's like 300 words, which is unheard of in football journalism when it comes to a manager. So I think Klopp's absolutely brilliant. Compared to what he's followed, I think he's been absolutely superb. So I think he does have his tendencies to sort of get snippy and at times, but they're very few and far between.
Don't apologise, by the way, for going around the houses on anything, because that was great, mate. I think the Liverpool fans listening to this, like getting that insight as someone who interacts with these people that we all see for all the time on our screens and at the game or whatever. I was fascinated by that, so I'm going to bring it round to Michael of Everton, because I know we've got a couple of Evertonians watching, even if we don't have a license for Everton, although it is it is one that we would like, or I'd like. What about Everton managers over the years then? Rich, how long have you been covering Everton for, and what can you tell us about the Everton managers that you've interacted with?
Full time, I've been covering Everton for 9 years now. So, but in terms of we used to have a sort of one club reporter situation with people like Click Liverpool, Mercury Press. So I was assigned Liverpool, so it was very rare I go to Everton, but I did go a few times, and that was sort of in the sort of tail end of the Moyes era. And funny enough, one of the games, it came to me the other day because Everton tweeted about him. Everton Aston Villa 2009. Didn't he have Billy Electon?
Yeah.
Scored and got sent off. Remember that one?
I can't remember him scoring and getting sent. I remember him scoring a worldie against Wolves, but I can't remember him scoring and getting sent off.
He definitely got sent off because I remember he went from saint to sinner. That was me subheading on my match report. And I'll tell you what, it was one of those days where it was a Saturday afternoon, 3:00 at Goodison, cold, mid-November, and you just thought, and it was that one, it's like at Goodison, when it gets moody, it gets moody. And it was one of those days where it was the first time I've been in the press box at Goodison, and it was like one of these things of like, it felt more intense being in the press box than being in the stands. Because when you go to any Everton game and it's intense, you feel it. But in the press box, when you're surrounded by everyone and you're in this little wooden box, it was like a little pulpit. It was unbelievable. But yeah, and then after that, I did the Tim Howard goal from his own end.
Yeah, against Bolton.
That one. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I can sort of understand how the ball took flight that much, because I wasn't driving then. I had to walk up to Anfield and get a bus back to Wavertree, so I had to walk all the way up to get 27. And how I did not end up getting blown into the road, because I wasn't always 20 stones from West. I was a bit scrawny when I was younger, so how I did not end up getting blown into the road, I have no idea. But on the back of that, about a year later, I think it was that 2012 or 2011? I can't actually remember.
2011,
I was 2011. I think. Yeah. So about a year later, the guy who was covering Everton for Clicking for Mercury moved on. So I've been doing Man City on alternate weeks to Liverpool, so which is why I've got the sort of grounding with the sort of rivalry they've got. And I said to the editor, "What's the chance of the Everton one going?" He's like, we want to have someone who's completely committed to it. If you're doing Liverpool one week and Everton the other, that's not going to work. And I said, it will work. It will work. Trust me. Because Everton's always been. I mean, I come from a family which is split down the middle, Liverpool and Everton. I mean, my dad was a Liverpool fan, went on the Cop in the 70s, and that. My mum spent many a lunchtime bunking off to go to Belfield and get the Everton 1970 team's autographs. We've actually got it. We've actually got, I kid you not, a scrapbook with about 5 Cohen Harvey autographs, 1 Alan Ball, 2 Howard Kendalls, a Mike Pedgick, Gordon West, you name it. The sort of the late 60s, early 70s team scrapbook is in my mum and dad's house. I mean, my dad won't have it around, but so I've always had this sort of affinity with both clubs. So covering both was never really a problem for me. So I started going to Finch Farm, mainly because I just thought, with the manager who were in Liverpool, obviously Dalglish was sort of quite early, so you could do Dalglish and you could jump a bus to Finch Farm, and then when I was driving, obviously drive down. So there wasn't really that sort of collision in terms of the games and the presses. So I ended up doing the first few with David Moyes, and they were pretty good, although they got quite lively because I don't know if you remember this, Royce and Drenfer basically blacklisted himself at Everton.
Yeah.
We won't speculate on why.
Don't speculate, but I know why.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But the question came up before the Everton United game in April 2012. And I was really annoyed about that game, by the way, because I don't know if you remember the giant thing in Liverpool, the wooden puppets.
No, I don't think so.
I don't know if you heard about it.
Being it. No, go on.
So basically, Liverpool were playing West Brom on the Saturday afternoon, and Everton were going to be playing Man United at Old Trafford. So I thought, great, I can do both games. So I thought the United Everton game is going to be pivotal in the title race. But because they bring this sort of street theatre of these wooden puppets that bounce through the streets of Liverpool every few years, it went past Anfield. So the Premier League said, we're going to have to move it to a Sunday. So that then removed the chance of me going to Old Trafford to see Everton, basically dent United's title bid. But anyway, by the by, the pressure before that, the Drenfer story had broken. So obviously everyone asked about it. So Vinny O'Connor Alan Irwin from Sky Sports said, what's the situation? Well, he's not playing. He's not in the squad. He's not playing. So is that it? Yeah. Okay, right, let's move on. But obviously other broadcasters have to ask the question for their own companies. So Simon Crabtree, who's a great guy, very, very, nice fella, he made the mistake of saying to Moyes, so is that it for Royce then? Is that it? Is he never playing for the club again? Moyes got up, walked out, and this clip is actually on YouTube still, funnily enough. Walked out, glared at him, and walked into the breakout room. And on the video, you can see me walking in, shaking my head and rolling my eyes, just like, he's absolutely done us here. Because, Moyes could be difficult if he was triggered by somebody. But to be fair to him, in the breakout, he was pretty good. And I quite like Moyes when he was at Everton, obviously. But I sort of, because of his longevity, because of those instances, I sort of was a bit wary about asking him a question. So I left it for the last pre-match press conference before he went to Man United to sort of ask him what he made of his legacy at Everton. And that was my sort of, that's the first time I've asked an Everton manager a question. Because there was a degree of intimidation, because I was only in my mid-20s, maybe early 20s at that time. So, it was quite imposing for me. And then Roberto Martinez was the complete opposite. Martinez was,
a lovely guy.
Lovely. I mean, it still took me about a year to sort of really sort of put up the courage, because by that point, the breakout had sort of they changed the breakout structure, so you were in the open section with the cameras. So, and I'm not a great public speaker, I'll admit. So I was a little bit sort of worried and wary and that sort of thing. So it took a while, but then once you get that, you get that first question out the way, the rest come tumbling. You start asking at post-match press conferences, you ask them every week and that sort of thing. And then before we get onto the Ronald Koeman one, I'll just there was a nice little one. I was asking about Samuel Eto'o, because I think he'd played in a game against West Ham. And as I'm asking him the question, and Martin's about to answer, this big booming voice comes out from the back of the Goodson press room. Get a move on, we've got to go and get the coach. Sam Allardyce. And when you look back on things that you think, oh well, you think at the time, it's Sam Allardyce being Sam Allardyce, and then we get to England and you think, oh well, I've been basically interrupted by the England manager, and he comes to Everton. I should have known when that happened. I thought he's going to end up here Sunday, but yeah, just before that, Ronald Koeman, again, a difficult one to take to. I mean, I'll make no bones about it. I love Ronald Koeman as a player. Obviously, I idolised Barcelona teams as a kid. I still do, to a large degree, but maybe not, not giddily falling over myself for them. But I loved that sort of team with Koeman, Laudrup, Guardiola, Romario. Loved all that. But as a manager, I just thought something about him just didn't strike a chord with me. I mean, I'm saying this the morning after he's just got Barcelona to a cup final against the Lodge, so maybe I shouldn't be too critical, but he did have a way about things that it made it hard to take to him. And then I felt a bit wary about asking him questions, and and also because probably the source of the 6-year-old schoolboy in me just thought, I can't say something to him, which is probably not ideal. But at the same time, I didn't really have anything meaningful to ask him. At that time, it was almost like, people were asking about Ross Barkley, people were asking about Lukaku, people were asking about, transfers. I didn't have anything to really bring to the table at that time. So it sort of was probably a good thing that I didn't ask him any questions, because I think I probably would have, probably would have been a bit stuck for words. But Allardyce, I didn't even bother, because it was that sort of period of like, it's like you just want to get over it. You just want it to be over. So I thought, let's make these presses as short and as painless as possible. And I mean, he clearly did a credible job, but some of the things that he did. I mean, attacking club employees on in front of TV cameras, getting, having whether he had any influence or not, people from the Sun attacking the club on social media. I just didn't like all that came with him. So I was quite glad he went. And obviously went to Marco Silva. He was very much sort of Roberto Martinez light, but I mean, as I think other journalists have said in other podcasts, he tried to be too clever. And I found this out firsthand, because I'd asked him questions, and this was sort of in the breakout situation again. I sort of was back in the breakout situation. So we had that sort of, it was me and one or two radio reporters, and I'd ask him questions, and you could see like his eyes would light up when he started like smiling nervously. And then he'd come up with this line of, I understand your question, and then he'd just completely dismiss it. He wouldn't answer it. And, he was very clever in that way, because, he never actually tricked himself up. He never actually said anything to really sort of, throw himself at the mercy of the headline writers or to get the fans on his back. But, being safe and careful isn't what, clubs like Everton, who have had success in the past and want to be successful again, crave. They want someone who's actually, authoritative, affirmative, clear in the view, not just, dancing around issues. So, I do have fond memories of Silva, but not from a football side of things. And then just bringing it around full circle, Carlo Ancelotti. What can I say about Carlo Ancelotti, honestly? I mean, I do actually end up saying after every press conference to my wife, and my wife's a Liverpool fan, I won't make any bones about that, but I keep saying to her, he's just brilliant. And even she says, yeah, I agree, he's brilliant. The way he talks and the way he is, you always get an answer out of him, and he's always quite honest, quite forthcoming with his answers. I mean, he doesn't understand me much personally, because I mean, I'll give you a bit of background to this. I started doing, I did a sit down with Ancelotti on his unveiling at Everton with a few radio and websites, and he was great, brilliant, really good. We spoke about Moyes, we spoke about Duncan Ferguson, really, really good. And then since we've been on these Zoom presses, I've been doing the occasional commission for the iPaper, for their weekend supplement, for their Monday editions. So when I've been given the nod to go in, I say to Evan, I've got to come in the breakout. Okay, fine, yeah. Okay, you gonna ask a question? Yeah, okay. I ask him a question. I always try and get mine out the way early doors, so it's not just I don't sort of leave it late, because I'm always sort of worried that I'll give you the last answer and that'll be it. I'll miss my chance. So I always get my question in first. The first one I asked him was about Marcelo Bielsa, because he'd never coached against Bielsa before Everton played Leeds at the back end of November. They'd had a few near misses, shall we say. Ancelotti left. Bielsa left Bilbao when Ancelotti went to Madrid, or vice versa. Ancelotti went to Napoli after Bielsa had been at Lazio. And the sort of paths had never crossed, but Ancelotti had a real fascination with him. So I asked the question to him, and as you've seen with a few times in Ancelotti's presses, he does this thing where he just sort of goes like that to the press officer. What's he on about? So, because obviously the connection's not very good on my glass. So then he repeats it. So my things have had to be my most recent questions to Ancelotti, pretty much all bar, I'd say, one or two, I've had to be interpreted by Everton's media manager, because I'm in the suburbs of Liverpool. I'm probably about a mile or two away from Finch Farm, but clearly my Wi-Fi's not good enough. So Ancelotti does that thing where you saw it with the Luke Garber thing where he goes, he's so. But now Ancelotti, I mean, I've always had a lot of respect for Ancelotti. I think he's wonderful. You look at all these European Cup winning managers. You look at people like Mourinho, knows? Zidane's probably a good example, I think. And, there's always that sort of hype around him. Ancelotti is what you see, is what you get with him. Similar to Klopp, but sort of more sort of, I'd say, genial, more sort of softly spoken. And don't be wrong, he can definitely give a rocket when he needs to. The Everton game on Monday, he was definitely barking a few orders at them when they needed to be sharpening up in defence. But, I think those two managers on their head now, Carlo Ancelotti and Jurgen Klopp, they are a dream for journalists because of who they are, what they've achieved. They are just the ultimate managers you want to have in charge of clubs on your patch.
Yeah, it must be a dream for you being a journalist and operating in that area and having two superstars on the touchline, especially at Everton. We've not had one for a while. But hey, listen, let's talk about soccer cards, Rich, because I'm intrigued to know about your personal collection and cards that you've collected down the years. We were talking before this. You've crossed paths with Futera before. What can you tell us, mate, about like the cards that you collected as a youngster and the types of players you looked for?
So, it's quite fitting that obviously I'm on a Futera podcast because I've actually got very fond memories of Futera cards because I used to go to school in West Derby, and we after school you were waiting to get the bus and stuff like that. And there was always a nice three-man parked outside every school. It seems to be a sort of rite of passage if you go to secondary school. And sort of, everyone's buying ice creams like mid-December when it's like, close to zero, and you're thinking, getting ice cold cans out to the fridge. But I went up and obviously I had me, bit of pocket money. Went up and I saw this ice cream man had these cards in foil packs on the sort of in the window alongside the sort of the price of the ice creams, and it was like Futera fan selection. And this was 2001, so I was about 13, 14 at the time. And obviously, I'd done the sticker collecting as a kid, but obviously cards were sort of a bit of a different thing. And these cards were always about. I think these cards were a year out of date because, you had a Man United one which was the treble. Now United hadn't won the treble for about 2 years, so they must have been a dead stock somewhere. But I've got a load of them in my mum and dad's house somewhere. They're in like a box in the loft, and there was like Davor Suker. There's one I think I mentioned to you before the show. This Steven Gerrard rookie cards, which is meant to be worth an excessive amount of money. And I'm almost certain I got that card. I'm almost certain I've got that in this collection. So it was a case of I'm a little bit OCD in terms of I want to have like sets of like certain things. So if I've got like about 5 Man United ones, I'm thinking how many more are left in there. So if as long as I keep getting all the, you get one, you complete a set. How many Liverpool, complete a set. And sort of it wasn't really sort of individuals I collected, but obviously people like Suker, Gerrard. I think Beckham was still knocking around then. I think even people like Dennis Bergkamp. People like that. The people you grow up sort of being amazed by. They were always quite. It was quite a big thing. Even probably was at that sort of age where I should have been sneaking out to go drinking. But it just sort of fascinated me because I have been football mad since an early age. So it always fascinated me. And I had the Premier League top trumps in about 1996. But how many Leeds players can you get before you get bored? They weren't the Leeds of the old, were they? So. And then, obviously the Premier League stickers, collections, and there was always, things like offshoots like Pogs. I don't know if you remember them, the little cardboard discs. I think they were called milk caps, but Pog was sort of the brand that sort of made them quite popular, and many a fight was had over them, especially the Premier League ones, because they were rare to get hold of. If you got hold of one of them, you were really somebody in school. So a few scraps ensued if anyone lost any of them in the piles, but. Yeah, the card thing's always been fascinating to me, more so than stickers, I think, because cards are sort of, stickers are 10 a penny, you can get. I remember doing a deal with a mate of mine. I traded off one of my old Jurassic Park toys, which is probably worth about £100 now, for a pile of Premier League swap, which is about that big. But there's about 5 Pavlo checks in it. So, cards are a little bit harder to come by, especially when they have your limited editions where, there's only 16 of one, or there's a gold-plated one. There is definitely more of an attraction to cards, I think, than stickers these days.
Yeah, well, we like to think so. Obviously, I can pretty much guarantee, Rich, that you might get the odd message off a collector saying, "Can you find out if you do have that Gerrard card? Because I'd like to buy it." It wouldn't surprise me, mate. Our collectors are a little bit crazy like that. You know that they will hunt you down, and if they think you've got something of worth in the old loft, they'll definitely get it down. Yeah, it's interesting what you say. You know what, mate? I've been going back and looking at the old stickers from because I think culturally for us in Britain, we had the whole kind of football sticker thing, and you got I don't know about you, but I used to get my stickers at the end of the week if I'd been good at school. My mum would get me a couple of packs of the Merlin ones back in the day, and it's what's really interesting now. And I was talking to somebody about this on the last podcast, which is like the development of this hobby over the years. Even if you go back and you look at what Futera were doing with the boxes in WH Smith's, the fan selection stuff, and the ones that you got your hands on as well in the ice cream van. How the development of cards. I mean, if you look at our cards now, I've got a Neco Williams one here. I want to talk to you about this player in a second, by the way. But just the quality and the difference in cards now and how the hobby's kind of evolved. It is really cool, and I love going back and looking at. So the old stickers, I make this point a lot about how raw they look, and how unpolished the players look. There's a Duncan Ferguson one from 1996. And I swear down, the guy's collar is all over the place. There's David Unsworth one, because I go back and look at the Everton ones. He hasn't got his button under. Now, they're super. Look at that one. Look how polished and nice Williams looks on this one. So, mate, so you obviously are very close to both clubs, Everton and Liverpool. Now, we've got a series of rookies on the website, Neco Williams being one of them. So I'll tell you what, I don't know how. I mean, if you don't see a lot of the younger players, then do let me know. But I'm sure you'd be aware of some of these guys. Lads like Nathaniel Phillips, Ben Woodburn, and obviously Reece Williams. I think he scored against us in the derby a couple of years ago. So when they beat us him with their under 21s, that was a bit of a disappointment. But who would you say are the most impressive youngsters that Liverpool have at the moment?
I think you probably nailed it there. I think Curtis Jones has definitely been the one who's broken through. Really, he's obviously getting a decent run of games now, and he's obviously it's been on the back of the injury situation in defence. Obviously, moving midfields into defence and so forth. But Jones has been impressive. It's interesting you got the Neco Williams card, because I think Neco Williams would have been a perfect option to drop in to centre back, because I think he's got the sort. I mean, maybe possibly not the sort of the physical stature of the players he'd be replacing, but I think Williams is a really good player, and obviously a Wales international already. I think he's been fantastic. Nat Phillips, I think, he's done pretty well. Reece Williams has been a bit sort of hit and miss. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Ben Woodburn, because Ben Woodburn isn't probably what you call a rookie anymore. He's now early 20s, and he's sort of been on the scene a while, but he's never really broken through into the sort of the first team setup regularly. He had probably a bit of in Klopp's first full season, a bit of a run, and obviously he scored that goal against Leeds, and everyone thought he was going to be, the new Michael Owen, because he came from Chester as well. But it just never came to be for him, unfortunately. So I think the players who are coming through at the moment, they seem quite promising for Liverpool, and it's been a while since we can actually say that Liverpool have had a decent academy pipeline, because I think when you look after after Steven Gerrard came through in 1998, in terms of tangible graduates, no one really came through. Yeah, you had people like Stephen Warnock, Neil Mellor, those sorts of types, Stephen Darby, Jay Spearing, but they were never really first team mainstays until really Trent Alexander-Arnold. So, the pipeline sort of kicked up again, and obviously people like Nat Phillips and Reece Williams aren't. Neco Williams as well aren't scousers, but they've been in the club since year dot. They've been in since they were pre 10 years old, so they are as ingrained into the club's fabric as much as probably most of the local lads. So I think those that are coming through now, I think that's testament to the work that's been done at the academy. I think, which I've got to say, when I started covering Liverpool, the academy was a bit of a joke, really. We had, you had this stand up between Benitez and Steve Highway, and Houllier and Steve Highway before it, and then Benitez tried to revolutionise it, and it didn't really work out, and then they changed it up again, and then changed it up again, and then obviously now they seem to have stuck on the right formula, similar to the first team. So there's definitely hopes for a promising future on the local nucleus level, I think.
Yeah, interesting that you made some of those observations about some of those rookies that we have. And yeah, you're right about the Woodburn one. I mean, he's a little bit older, isn't he, than the other boys? But I think it is his first card, you see, that we've done, so that's why he gets the rookie definition. I'm interested, Rich, as well, to ask you about the European Championships this year. Is there anybody from an England perspective? I mean, Foden is very impressive. I think England have an abundance of talent, but are there any other players across the board that you're excited about seeing in the summer?
Yeah, I mean, from the England perspective, I'm sort of hoping, and maybe I'm slightly biased here. I'm hoping Ben Godfrey gets a nod to the England team because he's such a complete defender. Wherever he plays, at full back, at centre back, he's physically, he's absolutely awesome in the way I mean, the one that stick out for me is the slide tackle on the Merseyside derby the other week when Everton won at Anfield. A longer way to win. That slide tackle was unbelievably perfectly timed. He's 22 years old, and if he's making tackles like that at that age, with the sort of physique he's got, with the position he's got, whether it's as a centre back or as a full back, I think you've got to put him in the England team. 100%, he's got to be in that England team for me. And obviously having someone like Michael Keane alongside him will help. Obviously, another fellow Evertonian, Jordan Pickford too. So in terms of England, I'd say probably Godfrey and Foden. I think Foden's been. I mean, I was at the game at Anfield where he scored that incredible goal to sort of just put the nail in Liverpool's coffin. Unbelievable player. And I always laugh about Foden because you get these sort of red top journalists, these dinosaurs of journalism who say, Phil Foden's basically signed a new contract to sit on the bench for the rest of his life. And it's like, do you not actually watch Manchester City? Do you not see what City do? What Guardiola does? He's not everyone's like Jadon Sancho who gets itchy feet and has to go somewhere else to get a ready-made run at first team football. And by the way, Sancho, I've interviewed him in the past, brilliant player, and he's clearly benefited from going to Dortmund. But Foden is a City fan. He's a local lad. He doesn't have that eagerness to sort of, venture far. And, it's paid off. He's been patient. He's stuck with it to his guns. He's chosen his heart rather than his head, which is probably saying you're not going to get a game here ahead of Gundogan, Henderson, Bernardo Silva, Fernandinho, Kevin De Bruyne. He's wasted his time. He's got it. And he's been absolutely phenomenal. And for me, has to be Young Player of the Year for the PFA this year. So from the England side there, the two I'd pick out. If you're looking further afield, obviously people like, Spain have got a decent crop of players at the moment, but I mean, who gets picked at the moment it depends on whether Ansu Fati comes back from his injury before the Euros and how fit he is. But I mean, Barcelona have a good little fullback there in Pedri, who's a midfielder, and he looks. I've got to be honest, I've seen a few Barca games this season in the past few weeks, and he's been incredible. He has been a real catalyst in midfield, and that's the sort of thing where Spain's a country that thrives on the midfield engine, and I think that he will be influential if he is called up. I think he's that sort of player who can really sort of generate some energy in midfield, because Spain's midfield has always been, especially since the World Cup in 2010 and even Euro 2012, it's been quite pedestrian in midfield. So you need someone like that who can really, a young lad who can bring a bit of oomph to midfield, I think. So Pedri's another one I think will be absolutely brilliant if he is called for the Euros. And I think everyone else, I think we know about the known quantities, don't we? So I think they're the three I'd say I'm really looking forward to sort of getting off the edge of my seat in the press box to see.
Okay, cool. Well, that's some great insight. What I'm going to do, I'm going to play a little game now. I just had an idea. I've got some Futera cards here, and what I'm going to do is I've got a little kind of collection. Let me just check them. See, yeah, all right, okay. So there's 1, 2, 3. Right, there's 3 lots of 2 Futera cards here. These are all icons of the game. I'll start with this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you them both, right? And then I want you to decide which card you would choose out of either of them. These are lovely cards. This one's pretty obvious given your connections to Liverpool. But Luis Suarez, that's a Memo Stars one. This is gold plated. It's got a bit of his jersey in from a La Liga match at the Bernabeu, and a Liverpool away game in the Premier League, or a Lee Dixon, the greats, officially licensed Arsenal product. Which one would you rather?
I've got to pick Suarez because I really played for Barcelona, for Christ's sake. I mean, I can't go against the next Barca player, really, can I?
Of course
But
not. Of course not.
Suarez. I mean, he was awesome, wasn't he? He was a very difficult character, but awesome.
I love the look of that card. Nothing against Lee Dixon, but I can see why you went with Luis Suarez there. Right, this is an interesting one. We've got a Maradona timeless patch card. So that's a fairly decent card. And this one contains a bit of his jersey from a Boca Juniors game in September 1997. And then we've got this one, which is a Pele and Neymar, then and now card, with a piece of Neymar's Barcelona jersey and Pele's New York Cosmos training top from 1977. Which one would you rather add to your collection, Rich?
This is a hard one, Maradona all day. I can't take the Neymar. I'm sorry, but I can't take him. But also Maradona. I mean, speaks for himself, doesn't he?
Okay, well, it does. It does. Now, this one's an all Brazilian one, but this one's a tricky one, I suppose, because you've got. If I'd have known you were going to say Neymar, I'd have selected it. You didn't. You weren't that favourable of Neymar. Anyway, then and now. So we've got Pele and Coutinho, Liverpool connection there. This has got Pele's Brazil game-worn jersey from an international match in 1968, and Coutinho's away jersey for an international friendly with Australia versus Douglas Costa Neymar National Heroes card. It's got Douglas Costa's Bayern Munich game-worn jersey from 2015 and Neymar's Barcelona jersey from 2015 as well. Which one are you saying?
Tough one. I'm going to have to say Pele and Coutinho.
Yeah. Good shout, mate. Look at
Pele
that.
is probably the second greatest of all time, to be fair. So.
Right. There you go. That's a fun little game. I just had that idea whilst we were on it. So I'm going to play that game, I think, more frequently with the people that I have on the podcast. Listen, Rich, it's been great to catch up with you, mate. If you are a fan of Liverpool, Everton, Manchester City, then I suggest that Rich is, well, just a fan of football because you cover all football, don't you? So where can people find you, mate?
Probably best place is probably Twitter. So my handle is Richard Buxton _. So nice and easy one to remember.
Yeah, I'm still brave in Twitter. I do my best to. I mean, I have to use it for Futera reasons, but personally now I just try and stay away from it a little bit. But fair play to you. You are still brave in Twitter. It can be a very strange place. And your book, mate, which is a terrific book, Fine Margins. Where can this be purchased? Well, I'll leave a link underneath the thing anyway. But
yeah, you can get it on Amazon though, and you can get it. Well, I would say most good bookshops, but they're all shut at the moment, so probably just Amazon.
Just Amazon for this, mate. I will make sure I leave a link. By the way, everybody, make sure you go and buy this book, especially if you support Liverpool or Manchester City. It's fascinating, but also if you just love football. I mean, I liked it. I love like the history of the game, so it was great getting those anecdotes and educating me a little bit on these two clubs. So thank you, Rich. Thanks for coming on the Soccer Cards and Chill podcast. Thank you for giving us your insight today. Great anecdotes about some of the game's greatest managers. So thanks for coming on and giving us your time, bud.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Speak to you soon.